What if one of the greatest rappers of all time didn't just lose his life too early, but lost his entire financial future while the world was mourning him? For nearly 3 decades, fans have believed the story was simple. The Notorious B.I.G. died young, his legend lived on, and the people closest to him made sure his legacy was protected. But according to leaked claims, insider allegations, and resurfaced contracts now circulating online, that story may be dangerously incomplete. Did Sean "Diddy" Combs quietly position himself to control a billion-dollar empire that Biggie never got the chance to defend? And if so, how early did it start? The making of a star. When Christopher Wallace signed with Bad Boy Records in the early 1990s, he wasn't thinking about empires, ownership, or generational wealth. He was thinking about survival. He was a hungry artist coming out of Brooklyn, focused on escaping the streets and feeding his family. Like most young artists at the time, Biggie trusted the people who promised to put him on. According to music industry insiders, the contracts Biggie signed followed a pattern that was common, but deeply lopsided. Master recordings, publishing splits, branding rights, and future royalties were allegedly structured in ways that heavily favored the label. And the label at the center of it all was controlled by one man. Diddy wasn't just Biggie's label head. He was his manager, promoter, brand architect, and public spokesman. That level of control, critics now argue, created a power imbalance that Biggie may never have fully understood, especially early in his career. Leaked discussions online claim that while Biggie was earning fame, the real money was being locked into paperwork he didn't negotiate from a position of power. By the time Ready to Die exploded globally, the framework of who owned what was already set, and that framework would become even more important after Biggie's death. Death, control, and the sudden shift in power. March 9th, 1997 changed hip-hop forever. Biggie was gone, but his catalog wasn't. In fact, according to industry analysts, an artist's death often marks the beginning of their most profitable era. Sales surge, licensing skyrockets, merchandising expands, the brand becomes immortal, and this is where leaked claims begin to get uncomfortable. Multiple commentators and former Bad Boy insiders allege that once Biggie passed, control over his music, image, and future revenue streams consolidated rapidly. Decisions that Biggie might have questioned in life were suddenly irreversible. Diddy became the face of Biggie's legacy, executive producing posthumous albums, approving collaborations, shaping documentaries, and representing the narrative publicly. On paper, this looked like loyalty, but behind the scenes, critics claim it also meant control. The recoupment, allegations that won't go away. One of the most disturbing leaked claims to resurface involves so-called recoupable expenses. In the music industry, labels often deduct costs from an artist's earnings before royalties are paid. Recording, marketing, promotion, all of it gets charged back. But according to allegations made by former insiders, even after Biggie's death, expenses continued to be assigned to his account. Some claims suggest that posthumous costs, including projects meant to honor Biggie, were structured in ways that allowed the label to recover money before the estate ever saw profit. These claims remain hotly disputed, and Biggie's estate has publicly denied certain allegations. Still, the persistence of these rumors has fueled suspicion for years, because if even a fraction of those deductions were real, it would mean Biggie's legacy was being monetized while his family and estate remain one step removed from the true numbers. Why this story refuses to die? What keeps this controversy alive isn't a single document or leaked page. It's the pattern. Artists from the same era have come forward with eerily similar stories about contracts they didn't understand, power they couldn't challenge, and wealth they never fully touched. In that context, Biggie's situation doesn't look isolated, it looks symbolic. Symbolic of an industry where ownership mattered more than talent, where paperwork outlived people, and where the loudest voice after death often became the most powerful one. The leaked contracts narrative. Online, the phrase leaked contracts doesn't refer to a single smoking gun document. Instead, it points to fragments, old bad boy deal structures, industry standard clauses, insider interviews, and reconstructed paperwork discussed by former associates and commentators. According to these claims, Biggie's original deal allegedly locked away ownership of his masters under the label indefinitely. While Biggie earned artist royalties, Bad Boy retained long-term control over how his music could be sold, licensed, repackaged, and reissued. In life, Biggie was reportedly aware of some of these limitations, but insiders argue he believed renegotiation would come later, once his leverage increased. That later, of course, never arrived. Speculative breakdowns suggest that posthumous albums, documentaries, anniversary releases, and licensing approvals were executed under contractual authority that Biggie never had the chance to challenge or revise. To critics, this is where the alleged finesse occurred, not through one dramatic betrayal, but through timing, silence, and paperwork that outlived the artist. The estate problem. After Biggie's death, his estate became the legal guardian of his interests. But estate control doesn't always equal creative control. According to legal analysts cited by independent creators, estates often inherit royalty streams without inheriting leverage. That means even if Biggie's family received payments, they may not have had final authority over licensing terms, branding decisions, or long-term monetization strategies. Those powers, critics argue, remain largely with the label structure Biggie signed into. This created a strange public contradiction. On one hand, Diddy was widely portrayed as protecting Biggie's legacy, keeping his music alive, telling his story, and honoring his memory. On the other, skeptics argue that being the gatekeeper of Biggie's image also meant being the primary beneficiary of its expansion. And because contracts are private, the public was left with stories instead of spreadsheets. How a rapper became a perpetual brand. One of the strongest arguments made by not verified sources is that Biggie's value didn't peak in the 1990s. It compounded. Streaming revived his catalog for new generations. Sampling introduced his voice into modern hits. Documentaries reintroduced his story to global audiences. Merchandise turned his image into a lifestyle symbol. According to speculative estimates, these revenue streams don't just generate millions. They stack across decades. And critics argue that Biggie's likeness became a foundational pillar, supporting the broader Bad Boy brand long after the music industry itself evolved. Why Diddy's name is always at the center? The reason Diddy remains central to these allegations isn't just proximity, it's scale. Bad Boy Records wasn't a passive distributor. It was a vertically integrated machine that handled talent development, branding, promotion, partnerships, and expansion. As the face and authority of that machine, Diddy's decisions shaped how Biggie's legacy moved through the world. Supporters argue this was stewardship. Critics argue it was consolidation. And in leaked claim narratives, consolidation is the real story. Not theft, not fraud, but control exercised at moments when resistance was impossible. That's why these discussions resurface whenever conversations about artist ownership re-enter the mainstream. Biggie's case has become a cautionary tale, a symbol used to question whether success always equals security. The billion-dollar question revisited. So did Diddy actually finesse Biggie out of a billion-dollar empire? There is no court ruling that says yes. There is no verified contract leak that proves it outright. But according to those who believe the narrative, the answer lies somewhere more uncomfortable, in systems that legally allow power to shift when someone dies, and in contracts that function exactly as written, even when the outcome feels wrong. In that sense, the alleged finesse wasn't illegal. It was structural. And structures don't need intent to create imbalance. They just need silence.